In the market right now off 25 points. You get stocks edging lower following the release of a disappointing September jobs report. But we're only off about 0.1%. So I'd say people taking this one in stride. And that's in part because they know that the hurricanes factored into this. Take a look at this. The U.S. economy losing 33,000 jobs last month as businesses were forced to close after hurricanes devastated large portions of Florida and Texas, two very vital states for our economy. But the U.S. economy remains strong despite the hurricane damage. Because take a look at this. The Dow, the S&P, the NASDAQ hitting new all-time highs nearly every day this week. So is there anything that can derail this bull market? Joining me right now, newly confirmed Council of Economic Advisors Chairman Kevin Hassett. Good to have you here, sir. Congrats on the new job.
Thanks a lot.
Walk me through these numbers today, because some people are saying, my gosh, we lost 33,000 jobs. That's a really big deal. But do they need to take these numbers with a little grain of salt?
Yeah, absolutely. We have been following natural disasters for a long time. And of course, our hearts go out to all the people affected by the hurricane. It's a human story, not as much as a job story, right? But this natural disaster is the worst one in 21 years for jobs. That you have to go all the way back. Do you remember that great blizzard of '96 where we had 4 foot of snow from Virginia to Boston?
Yeah.
Like that one was worse for jobs. But you have to go all the way back to there to see a hurricane effect this big in the jobs numbers. Mm-hmm. Our estimate is that it's about 200,000 jobs were taken off the number because of the hurricane.
Wow. So it could have been a whole lot better. I mean, we did
Sure.
see economists ratchet down their expectations as a result of the hurricane. They thought it was going to be better. 4.2% unemployment, though. A lot of Americans might be looking at that and say, hey, 4.2% unemployment. But was that also affected in some ways, Kevin, by the hurricane
A little
itself?
bit. That's a great question. As always, Trish. But the way to think about it is that the payroll survey is when they call up employers and they say, how many people did you pay last week? And a lot of restaurants closed in Florida, especially during the survey week. And in fact, restaurant employment went down by about 110,000 workers because they were closed and the employer said we didn't pay them. But if on the household survey they called up the worker and they said, hey, do you have a job? They would have said yes. They just didn't get paid this week because the restaurant was closed. And so the household survey shows the unemployment rate is going down to 4.2. And I think that that's really the best measure this month to smooth through the ups and downs.
Talk to me about labor force participation, because this has been a frustrating number. Under this administration, we've seen some improvement in it overall, but you want to see as many people as possible, right, getting back to work, wanting to go back to work. Do you anticipate that starts to change, or are we dealing with some real structural shifts in our economy that include just so many retirees choosing not to be in the workforce?
Well, as you know, and you talk about a lot, there are so many factors affecting this, including opioid abuse and people being discouraged because of the Great Recession. They couldn't find a job and then they just gave up. The good news is that there are pockets of the country that are so hot that people are starting to be drawn back into the labor force. If you look at, say, Colorado, where there's about half an unemployed person for every job listing right now, a lot of people that have been separated from society a little bit are getting optimistic again and coming back in. But make no mistake, we've got to have a better economy than we've had, than we inherited from President Obama. And that's why we now need to, give this optimism some hope to continue by passing the president's policies. I think that if we get a tax reform, for example, passed this year, then it'll give us a big chance to make this recovery continue.
That's an interesting point. And I talked to a lot of analysts on this program, actually, many of whom have been predicting earlier in the year Dow 23,000, in part because of this optimism you talk about. And hey, we're quite close to that right now, Kevin. If you get tax cuts, then that's sort of the cherry on top, and who knows? I mean, we could really start to see some of this prosperity be unleashed. But in terms of fundamentals right now, I mean, you talked about something that I think is very important, and that's optimism. Are we starting to see a shift in terms of how businesses, both large and small, are thinking? Ah, darn it, we lost him. Well, I think we are starting to see a shift. Kevin, are you still there? If you are,
I'm still here. I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Are we seeing a shift in terms of how businesses, business owners are thinking about the economy and thinking about the future?
Right, absolutely. Optimism is about as good as I've ever seen, and I think it's in part related to all the deregulation that President Trump and the team have accomplished. But I also think that people are looking ahead to tax reform, and if they're disappointed because we don't pass it, then I think that that's going to be a real negative for growth.
So they want it, they expect it, and they need it.
Right.
And so, we've been moving along here, chugging along. I've made the point, Kevin, over the last 8 years, we got nothing from Washington, really and truly nothing. And so the Fed was the only game in town. the Fed's
No,
now backing
actually,
off
I disagree.
that.
I was just going to say I disagree because it's not that we got nothing from Washington. We got way too much. If you go back and look at how many new regulations that President Obama gave us, it really squashed the economy. And President Trump has almost slowed those to a crawl, and that means that businesses are optimistic again. It's not really that hard to connect the dots.
Yeah, I meant it a little bit differently in that we got nothing in the way of something that would be positive for the economy. It was
nothing would have been better, is all I'm saying.
I get it. But, you saw the Fed have to step in, Kevin, and really push aggressively to move this economy along and prevent it from dipping into recession. Now the Fed is telling us it's kind of out of the picture. In fact, it's trying to unwind its balance sheet there. So we need Washington. We need tax cuts. We need something to come forward. How do you think the Fed unwinding is going to go?
Well, first, I think you're right that we need good Washington, not bad Washington, and that's why President Trump is here. And as for the Fed, we respect the independence of the Fed and have all the respect in the world for the decision makers there and trust that they're going to do a good job.
Well, we are excited to have you here on this show and excited for your new gig and excited to start seeing some real growth in this economy. It's about time. People need it.
Thanks
Wages that are higher, stock market that's higher, and more jobs. Kevin, thank you very much.
Sure. Bye-bye.